We live in extremes. We chase success obsessively, measuring our worth by accolades, or we drown in self-doubt, convinced we're never enough. We lock emotions away, letting them fester, or we let them overflow, ruled by every feeling. We burn out chasing perfection, or we fall into apathy, paralyzed by inaction. It's as though we're trapped on a pendulum, swinging endlessly between extremes, never finding stillness or the calm center where clarity resides. But somewhere in the middle lies wisdom, a place of equilibrium where the noise fades and truth can be heard. It's subtle, almost invisible, yet it holds the key to a life of meaning. Over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle spoke of the Golden Mean, the idea that true virtue lies not in extremes but in balance. Courage, he said, is not recklessness or cowardice, but the space between, acting with intention, even in fear. Generosity is neither extravagance nor miserliness, but giving freely without losing oneself. Confidence is not arrogance or self-deprecation, but the quiet assurance of knowing your worth without needing to prove it. Yet in a world that glorifies excesses, where burnout is worn as a badge of honor, wealth accumulation overshadows connection, pleasure becomes a prison, the golden mean feels almost radical. It's a quiet rebellion against the noise, a choice to step off the pendulum, plant your feet firmly in the center and say, enough. Enough chasing, enough proving, enough striving. Here, in the middle, is where life unfolds. This balance isn't a static state. It's a dynamic dance, a constant recalibration. It requires awareness, the willingness to pause and ask, am I leaning too far? It demands courage, the strength to resist societal pressures and stay true to your rhythm. And it invites compassion, the understanding that we're all navigating this tension, all seeking our own version of the golden mean. In a culture that thrives on polarization, choosing balance is an act of defiance. It's a declaration that you won't be defined by extremes, that you won't sacrifice your well-being for external validation. It's a commitment to living deeply, authentically, and fully in the light of harmony, where you'll find not just wisdom but freedom. We're told that 80-hour weeks are the price of success, that exhaustion is a badge of honor, and that rest is for the unambitious. We're sold the idea that happiness comes from more money, more recognition, more possessions. And if we aren't pushing ourselves to the brink, we're falling behind, chasing a standard that's always just out of reach. But what if neither extreme is the answer? What if the pursuit of more is a mirage, distracting us from a deeper truth? What if fulfillment isn't found in extremes, but in walking the fine line between them? This isn't a compromise or settling for less. It's a deliberate choice to step away from the noise, resist societal pressures, and reclaim your own rhythm. Imagine a life where success isn't measured by how much you endure, but by how deeply you engage with what matters. Picture happiness rooted not in external validation, but in an inner sense of peace and purpose. This is the invitation of balance, not to abandon ambition, but to channel it in ways that nourish rather than deplete, that build rather than break. The culture of extremes thrives on our fear of missing out or not being enough. But what if the real act of courage is to step off the treadmill, question the narratives we've been handed, and redefine what it means to live a life? What if the most radical thing you can do is to slow down, listen to your own needs, and trust that the middle ground isn't mediocrity, but a space of profound possibility? This isn't an easy path. It requires confronting uncertainty, resisting quick fixes, and embracing the messiness of being human. But in that messiness lies the potential for something extraordinary, a life defined by the imperfection and beauty of being yourself. Aristotle understood that too much of anything, even something good, can become destructive. Too much discipline turns structure into rigidity, a suffocating cage. Too much freedom leads to chaos, leaving us adrift. Too much self-reflection breeds paralyzing self-doubt. Too little blinds us to our flaws. Balance is a delicate dance, one we've forgotten in our rush to achieve, accumulate, and prove ourselves. We've traded harmony for haste, creating a world where extremes aren't just common, they're celebrated. Excess doesn't lead to fulfillment, it leads to burnout. It creates a life that looks impressive but feels hollow, We become strangers to ourselves, so focused on the next goal that we forget why we're chasing it. In that forgetting, we lose sight of what brings us joy, connection, and meaning. On the other end lies apathy, the belief that nothing matters, that effort is pointless. It's the shadow of burnout, the quiet resignation that comes from pushing too hard for too long. It whispers, "What's the point?" and mistakes stillness for stagnation. Both extremes, burnout and apathy, are symptoms of the same imbalance. They're the result of a culture that values doing over being, having over becoming. But there's another way, a path that honors effort and rest, ambition and contentment, self-reflection and self-compassion. It's not easy, nor quick, but it's worth walking. The consequences of extremes ripple outward, affecting our relationships, communities, and the world. When we live in extremes, we lose the ability to connect deeply, to listen fully, to show up as our whole selves. We become fragments, scattered between too much and too little. But balance isn't out of reach. It begins with a single step, a single breath, a single moment of choosing something different. It starts with the courage to say, enough, and the wisdom to ask, what truly matters? In that question, in that choice, lies the possibility of a life defined not by extremes, but by the beauty of the middle ground. So how do we find our way back to the middle? How do we step off the pendulum? The answer lies not in a single grand gesture, but in small, intentional choices. It's a journey of returning again and again to the center, a place where we can breathe, see clearly, and truly live. It starts with awareness. This is the foundation. Awareness means recognizing when we're pulled too far in one direction, when the pursuit of success overshadows rest, or when self-doubt turns growth into fear. It's the light that helps us see where we are so we can choose where to go next. But awareness alone isn't enough. It must be followed by action. This means learning to say no, not out of defiance, but out of respect for our limits and values. No to endless demands, impossible standards, and the myth that we must do it all. Saying no isn't rejecting opportunity. It's affirming what truly matters. It's creating space for what nourishes us, not what depletes us. Balance isn't a destination, it's a practice. Some days it feels effortless, like a natural rhythm. Other days it's a struggle, requiring conscious effort to resist old habits and external pressures. But every time we choose balance, we strengthen our ability to live from the center, not the extremes. Aristotle's Golden Mean isn't about mediocrity. It's about finding the sweet spot where we thrive, fully alive and fully ourselves. Life isn't a binary choice between left or right, good or bad. It's a spectrum of possibilities. It's the courage to take risks without recklessness, to step into the unknown without losing grounding. It's the confidence to stand tall without dominating, to own our worth without diminishing others. It's the generosity to give freely without depletion, to share from abundance rather than scarcity. The middle ground isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's showing up as we are and choosing wholeness. It's trusting that the center isn't a limitation, but a space of infinite potential. No matter how far we stray, the middle is always there waiting for us to return. So take a step back, breathe deeply, notice where you are and choose where you want to be. The middle ground isn't a distant ideal, it's here, in this moment, in this choice. And it's yours to claim. In a world that glorifies extremes, the Golden Mean is a quiet revolution. It's a reminder that fulfillment doesn't come from more or less, but from enough. Enough effort, enough rest, enough joy, enough struggle. Enough to feel alive without being overwhelmed. Enough to grow without losing ourselves. Balance isn't something you achieve once and keep forever. It's a constant recalibration. Like walking a tightrope, every step requires attention and adjustment. Lean too far one way, and you fall into excess. Lean too far the other, and you tumble into deficiency. The middle ground isn't a place of comfort or complacency. It's a dynamic space of engagement, where you're fully present, alive, and responsible for your choices. Yet we crave for a foolproof formula for balance, a fixed point of perfect equilibrium. But life is fluid, unpredictable, and messy. Balance is more of a dance you learn step by step as you move through life. Balance also demands self-compassion. It asks you to let go of perfection and embrace imperfection. Celebrate the small victories, choosing rest over hustle, saying no to what doesn't align with your values, pausing to breathe instead of rushing. These moments may seem small, but they're the building blocks of a balanced life. The Golden Mean isn't just a philosophy, it's a way of being. It's a commitment to showing up daily, choosing the middle path even when extremes call. Balance isn't about eliminating tension, but holding it with grace. It's finding harmony in chaos, stillness in motion, and enough in the midst of it all. Take the next step, feel the tension, and trust yourself to find the center. The dance of balance isn't about getting it right. It's about staying in the movement, staying present, and staying true to yourself. In that truth, you'll find not just balance, but a life rich, meaningful, and deeply your own. We often think that this balance is boring, that if we aren't extreme, we aren't truly living. We idolize the hustle, the grind, the all-or-nothing mindset. We romanticize burning the candle at both ends, treating exhaustion as a badge of honor. But what does this cost us? Our health, relationships, and sense of self erode under relentless striving. But what if the opposite is true? What if balance is the only way to live fully, without burning out or losing ourselves? What if moderation isn't a limitation, but a liberation? A way to reclaim our time, energy, and attention for what truly matters. Moderation isn't about playing it safe or avoiding risk. It's about intentional choices, investing energy where it counts, saying yes to what aligns with your values, and letting go of what doesn't. It's recognizing that life isn't a race, but a journey to be savored. When you chase extremes, pushing yourself to the brink, sacrificing sleep, relationships, and peace, what do you gain? A fleeting high, a moment of validation, a temporary sense of accomplishment. But at what cost? Moderation isn't about playing it safe, it's about playing it smart. It's recognizing that you don't have to destroy yourself to create something meaningful. True success isn't measured by how much you endure, but by how deeply you live. It's the freedom to pursue passions without being consumed by them, to pour your heart into work, art, or dreams without losing sight of who you are outside them. It's setting ambitious goals without tying your worth to the outcome. It's striving for excellence without equating failure with inadequacy. It's living with intention, not obsession, moving through the world with purpose, but also presence. This new definition of success is radical. It challenges the status quo, rejecting the idea that success is a zero-sum game where you lose yourself to find it. Instead, it invites you to redefine success on your own terms. Is it waking up with purpose? Nurturing relationships that fill your cup? Creating, contributing, and connecting in ways that feel authentic and fulfilling? Success in this light isn't a destination. It's a way of being. It's aligning your actions with your values, finding joy in the process, not just the outcome. It's understanding that your worth isn't tied to productivity, achievements, or outrunning others. Imagine a life where success isn't something you chase, but something you embody, where you pursue dreams without losing yourself, and strive for greatness without sacrificing your humanity. This is the promise of moderation, not as a limitation but as liberation. So ask yourself, what does success look like to you? Not the version society sold you, but the one that resonates with your soul. What would it feel like to live a life where you are enough, just as you are? Where your worth isn't something to prove, but something you already possess. This is the invitation of a new definition of success. It's not about doing more, but being more present, intentional, and alive. It's finding balance between ambition and contentment, striving and savoring. It's realizing that the greatest success is living a life true to you. Aristotle's Golden Mean isn't a rule, it's an invitation to stop swinging between extremes and find stillness in the middle. It's a call to live not in the chaos of excess or the emptiness of deficiency, but in the quiet space where life feels whole and we feel whole. This middle ground isn't a compromise, it's a revelation. Fulfillment isn't found in extremes, but in balance. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. Success isn't having it all, but having enough. Enough is a paradox. It's not a number or a fixed point, it's a feeling. A sense of wholeness that comes from internal alignment, not external achievements. It's realizing you don't need more to be happy, don't need to prove your worth, and don't need extremes to feel alive. Life itself isn't a race to the finish line. After all, we all get there in the end. But life is like a river. The beauty isn't in how fast you flow, but in how you navigate the currents. It's in the stillness of the pools, the bends and turns, the moments of calm and turbulence. It's about moving with the water, not fighting against it, but feeling its rhythm. Maybe this is where we were meant to be all along. Not on the edges, stretched thin and pulled apart, but in the center, standing firm and whole. The middle ground isn't mediocrity, it's possibility. It's where we can fully show up for ourselves, for others, for life itself. The pendulum will always swing, the world will always pull. But you don't have to follow. You can choose the middle. You can choose balance. And in that choice, you might just find the life you've been searching for all along.